In contrast, when you get to the very last two verses, peace, peace to those far and near, says the Lord, and I'll heal them. But the wicked are like the tossing sea that cannot rest, whose waves cast up mire and mud. There's no peace, says my God, for the wicked. 40 to 66, the major part of the book of Isaiah in importance, is divided into three divisions, 9 chapters each, and at the end of each section of 9 chapters you have this warning: there is no peace for the wicked. You know, there was a great missionary called E. Stanley Jones. He ministered in India for years. He was very sickly as a young man. He said, Lord, I want to be a missionary, but I'm sick. And he felt the Lord was saying to him, if you will put me first, I'll care for your health. He lived into his 90s, wrote a lot of wonderful books like Abundant Living and all sorts of great books, Christ of the Indian Road. And he wrote on one occasion this. He said, to be good is good for you. That's a very important statement. Sometimes we foolishly think, hey, the Lord wants this and he wants that. He's going to take away all my pleasures. He's going to ask this of me and I don't want to give it up. But God is for us, not against us. And to be good is good for us. And there is no peace if we don't follow his will. To be bad is bad for us. Right, let's look at 58 before we stop. Shout it aloud, don't hold back, raise your voice like a trumpet, declare to my people their rebellion, the house of Jacob their sins. Here God is saying that in every professed group of Christians, there's a very large segment that don't mean it. People go to church for many reasons. Sometimes it's business reasons, sometimes it's social reasons, sometimes it's to placate an uneasy conscience. I remember a very great teacher, personal friend of mine by the name of Heppenstall. He was always being besieged by a woman in his church. What can I do for the Lord? What can I do for the Lord? And after he had endured this for many months, he said to the woman, what have you done? Why is your conscience so uneasy? And he found out she had guilt on her conscience. He's trying to work it off. You don't get rid of guilt that way. You get rid of guilt by looking at the cross and knowing that your guilt was dealt with 2,000 years ago. And all we can do is accept it. But the majority of people who attend churches have never been converted. That's a very sad thing. And here's an illustration of it. Verse 2, day after day they seek me out, they seem eager to know my ways, as if they were a nation or a church that does what's right and has not forsaken the commands of its God. They ask me for just decisions, seem eager for God to come near them. Why have we fasted, they say? You haven't seen it. Why have we humbled ourselves? You've not noticed. Listen. Any self-punishing without love is conceit and vanity. Any religious observances not motivated by love to God and man are a deception. And here is Israel saying, look, we fast and you don't recognize it. We're humble and you haven't noticed. Well, as Lewis says, the greatest sign of a confirmed pride is think you're humble enough. That does me in every time I read that, because we all think we're humble enough. We know other people that aren't, but we're humble enough. But the greatest sign of a confirmed pride is think we're humble enough. Yet on the day of your fasting you do as you please. You exploit all your workers. Your fasting ends in quarrelling and strife, in striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. And then God gives them advice. Is this the kind of fast I've chosen? only a day for a man to humble himself? Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed and for lying on sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you call a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? Is not this the kind of fasting I've chosen? Loose the chains of injustice, untie the cords of the yoke, set the oppressed free, break every yoke, share your food with the hungry, provide the poor wanderer with shelter. When you see the naked, to clothe him, not to turn away from your own flesh and blood. Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you'll call, and the Lord will answer. You'll cry for help, and he'll say, here am I. If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing finger and malicious talk. A lot of Christians were at a social meal together, and they were gossiping about fellow church members. And one of them had been very quiet. When there was a pause, he looked up and he said, who will we cut up next? Who will we cut up next? Pointing finger and malicious talk. If you spend yourselves on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness. Your night will become like the noonday. The Lord will guide you always. He'll satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land. He'll strengthen your frame. You'll be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins, raise up the age-old foundations. You'll be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings, if you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath, from doing as you please on my holy day. If you call the Sabbath a delight, the Hebrew word means a luxury, a delicacy. Call the Sabbath not a burden, but a luxury, a delicacy. If you'll honour it by not going your own ways or doing as you please, or speaking idle words, chit-chat, then you'll find your joy in the Lord, and I'll cause you to ride on the heights of the land and to feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob. The mouth of the Lord has spoken it. So here he talks to people who were outwardly religious but didn't have a heart of love, and most of all, they were not really worshippers of God. They didn't adore him. Only when God is the primary sight for all our attention, our primary attentions, only then can we love. Only then can we serve. Let's take a break.